as a natural marketer, I would want to do that. But you got to ask the decision maker, is this what you want? There's 1,650 decision makers. They're going to want and need something different. That's why the NCAA has one process, and it's emailing. And now they're allowed to heart something or like something, but they're only allowed to say, yes, I'm interested, or to send a questionnaire or invite you to their camp. And
welcome to the Foul Pole to Foul Pole podcast, brought to you by Black Diamond Softball and Fitness, presented by the Till Valhalla Project, where heroes live on forever.
No, I'm Cheri Naudin. I'm the owner of Collegiate Sports Advocate, which is a very progressive, unique, somebody called us a boutique firm of recruiting in sports. We're very famous in softball. We have all different areas that we do cover, but literally any NCAA or NAIA, it's a process, a system that actually interlinks life skills and the end result, which is recruiting. And the big ticker, we stay with them until they graduate college. So,
absolutely, Cheri, I followed you a little bit on social media, and I've gone to the website, and everything I look at, I can tell it's from the heart, and you're helping athletes, you're helping families kind of navigate the waters in this recruiting process. And I can't thank you enough for what you do. I want to thank you for all the families that you helped over the years, and you've been doing this for quite some time. How long have you been helping families kind of navigate through this?
Oh my gosh, this is a loaded question because I think I've always been doing it. But I did start coaching. My middle daughter is born in 93. And by 98, I was like, move over, I'm coaching. So I kind of stepped in because I come from a family of athletes. My husband comes from a family of athletes. It's just what we do and it's what we know. And then, of course, our kids were born with some God-given talent to compete at a very elite level. So pretty much jumped in there, but formalizing of recruiting, I got a little experience with one company that actually taught me how to actually flip the process and do what's right for the individual student athlete. So as I was telling you earlier, I shut my eyes one night with tears in it and said, I am an advocate for student athletes. It's not just recruiting. It's the journey. It's the bumps along the way. It's learning to climb a mountain. It is individual. You cannot just go out there and have, somebody said, write a book. I wrote a book on communication. People don't read books, but they have a difficult time owning it and making it personal to themselves. And as you know, I do a bunch of Twitter lives, but there's one coming up on social media, and it's really scary that parents are very good at promoting social media. And I know that's one of your questions, so I might be jumping ahead here, but they do a great job of promoting what they want their child to be and what they think their child is. But they're actually doing a lot more damage by putting it out there. And my husband has said it for years. The more you maneuver and manipulate the system, the more you actually damage your student athlete. Mm-hmm. So I'm really, really protective. I feel more of an advocate and a confidant, and I call myself anti-softball, than it is the end result of recruiting.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of different people around the game of softball. And one thing I found when you talk to people, they want to do the best for the kids. Oftentimes, what may be best for the kids gets overshadowed by us adults trying to get something out of it, try to use them as a pawn in different ways. And we may not even know that we're doing that. And I want to ask you, when a parent comes to you and they want to get going in the process of how to get started, what's the number one question that you get when one of their very first questions that they get when they start this process with you?
Yeah, good one. I want to go back to say our foundation was built on doing what's in the best interest of the student athlete. Mm-hmm. So anytime we're in conflict, either in our head or in our heart, you go back and say what's in the best interest of the student athlete. Yeah. The number one question the parents ask is, what's your guarantee? My guarantee is their student athlete. I mean, my daughter's a lawyer. You better believe that I have a legal contract. And, and that's what we give is a system that's very task oriented, because there is a system to getting it done. And I'm an ex 28-year marketing and salesperson from telecom. So there is methodology and systematic things that actually produce the results. So a lot of people say, oh, trust the process. I'm like, no, work the process. If your student athlete's willing to work the process, and then they'll come back and say, well, what's the process? Well, that's an individual thing. I can give, as you and I talked about, a team plan. I can give you a team strategy of what to do, but it really boils down to the individual student athlete and what they're willing to do, what their talent level is, what their academic level is, what their work rate is. And then there's a lot of things that we actually developed along the way, which was what we call a decision grid. At the very end, we've developed for many, many years of working with them. We don't just take them 2 months before their due date of call-in time for September 1st, their junior year. We've worked with them usually for 2 or 3 years at that point. We have developed and understood what it is that's going to make them work. Sometimes it's faith. Sometimes it's region. Sometimes it's, hey, their test scores. I mean, there's just a lot to it. But I think the number one question is, what's your guarantee? Your child is your guarantee.
Exactly. It's, I didn't even think about that. When I put the questions out there, what would you ask if you had this opportunity to sit down with you for this podcast? And I didn't hear anyone ask about that guarantee. I think maybe they were kind of put off. They didn't want me to know that question, because and that's me too. If I was in that situation right now and I was going to reach out and I was going to go down this path, and I'm soon to be, I would want to know, okay, what are we guaranteed here? What are we spending our time, money, energy, and effort on? What kind of kickback can I have from that? And I guess that's the human nature. And it brings me to my next question for you is, human nature to look after people. I think that's the root and that's the foundation of who you are. So how involved do you get with these families and have a vested interest, and you have this same feeling for them that you want to see them succeed and you want to give them the best options, or at least show them the best options when they do make their decisions?
Yeah, and that's the relationship piece. That's the part of getting to know them. We have touch points in the system, and where, we come back and review a season and plan the next season and really start to understand communication, time management, accountability are the pillars that we work under, and how they interlink together. And that's a common theme we talk about over and over again. But it's understanding what the right fit is. And that would be the second question parents would ask me usually is, hey, where do you see my kid playing? Can my kid play D1? And I said, I wish the college coaches would let me put them where I know they're going to be successful. But the reality is, and I ask this a lot, and we are heavy. We were 62% D1 in 2022, sight unseen. Like, our kids went places in COVID that didn't even get seen because they trust the layers. They trust what we do. Yeah. And we deliver them content that shows that this kid is legit. This year, of course, because it's 2024 and a lot of the schools really haven't picked yet. About a fourth have already picked. We're all D1 right now. And top level. But that's our reputation, because of where we sit as people in our family in the sport has always been pretty much the top layer relationships. But a lot of people think, oh, she coached 4 girls that played at OU. Oh, she's going to help my kid, go D1. So I turn around and ask the question, what's D1? And they're like, Division 1. I'm like, but really, what's D1? And that's that expectation that parents have, that they're paying for something, that they want what they want. And my husband, being a Coca-Cola employee, I said, it's like a soda machine. They walk up and they think they push the button and out comes the can of Texas A&M. And it's just not that simple. And my favorite client is when it's a professional family that actually understands the next layer of consulting and support and partnering, versus a family that comes in and says, we want what we want, and my kid is good, but I live in a small town. I've never, traveled or gone someplace else, but my kid's the number one kid in the town. That's usually a tough package, because they don't see what we see nationally. So, yeah,
it's funny, because to me, I'm coming into that space right now with my daughters, and I've had those conversations with them. And just the other day, I was talking to my middle child, and she says to me, now she's about to turn 13, and she says to me, Dad, I feel like I'm going to let people down if I don't go D1. And so I had to take a step back and talking with people around. It's like, look, you don't need to be putting that kind of pressure on yourself right now because you've got a lot of time and there's more options out there than going D1. It's not a D1 or bust mentality because it could be something else, not talent related, or it could be school related. It could be a whole bunch of different things that your life shifts and you go a different direction. So don't put this on yourself right now. Is that the mentality you get still today with players?
It's so unbelievable. So one of the first things we do, and we're ready here in Texas because high school ball is starting, we get out there and talk to the 13 and 14-year-olds. We want to see the eighth graders and the ninth graders and have what we call a truth recruiting conversation. And we have this whole presentation and we do it state by state and really help them understand the numbers and the prospects. And hey, there's 18 D1 schools in Texas. Y'all aren't going D1 in Texas, but does D1 mean that that's the top talent? Does that mean, that's going to be a D1 experience? That's what I tell people, because you talk to the D2 coaches, our two conferences here in the Texas area, Lone Star and Great American, they freaking win every year. And they can flat out beat half of the D1s that are out there. And if you watch the JUCO preseason, they come in and they battle these Power 5 conference rosters. So I think there's a misunderstanding to the public that D1 in softball is a more talented athlete. They all pitch 60. I talked to a D2 the other day in West Texas about a pitcher of mine, and they're like, no, we just committed 2, and they throw in the mid-60s. Hello? That's what it takes to pitch in college. Yeah. And you're going to look at 95% of our pitchers are all still 55 to 58. And a pitching coach and a pitching parent's going to say, oh, but they've got spin and they've got this and that. Well, guess what? They're going to get hit, and they're going to get hit hard because it gives the batter more time to see the pitch, right? Whether it's spinning or dropping or curving or rising. I mean, it just is what it is. And we don't set those standards. And then this is the magic that we have. It's those relationships that we've had for 20 plus years where I can call a coach and say, help me understand. Right. And once I get that understanding of what that particular college is looking for, I'm almost like a matchmaker. I feel like Patty Zanger, matchmaker for the stars, because that's really what it takes. But a parent that calls me and says, hey, I don't understand why my kid's not D1 September 2nd. I can go back and tell you they just made moves that were incorrect. It wasn't that their kid isn't talented. They didn't listen. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have an approach, and they didn't get in early enough to get enough exposure to get in the game.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And you had mentioned the relationships and the network. That is one of the most important pieces to the puzzle is the relationship.
To life.
And
to life.
Yeah. We spoke just a little bit ago, and it's not really anymore. It doesn't matter who you know. It's who knows you and what they know. Because at the end of the day, we have these decision makers that are out of our reach that we don't know why they go one way or the other. But if we can sort of build a relationship with them, we can kind of see trends. And then you're looking at athletes and going, okay, well, I know you're not a good fit here, but you are a good fit here. So when you talk to these parents and you're trying to, give them insight and say, hey, look, these are the schools that you should look at. Look at these schools are here. I know you have your list, but look at these schools. How do you gain that confidence with those parents and let them know that I know these schools, I know these coaches, I know these programs. This is what it's like.
It's honestly the most heartbreaking part of our job because you're going to crush a parent. I can go with a couple different scenarios. Literally, a student athlete that darling, everybody loved her. She could play, and just they chose to go to camps that they want to go to. And I know we're going to discuss that topic too, but they chose where they wanted to go, and they really like this kid and everybody likes her, but her talent level wasn't there. But the coach isn't going to say, oh, girlfriend, you're really cute and you're darling. And yes, you can hit, catch, and throw, but not at my layer, right? And the parent could not sit in the stands and understand how their kid wasn't going to go to this, Power 5 conference school that's just pretty elite. And yet went through 2 years of going to every camp they wanted to go to, as low in the rankings in D1 as they could possibly go. And they were D1 or bust, D1 or bust. And they were definitely a family that put in that recipe, like I want this ingredient, that ingredient, and this ingredient, and really pinholed themselves. Well, guess what? They ended up quitting because they were so disappointed. And so feeling they're going to disappoint their parent and feeling like we didn't do a good job for them. And I'm like, oh, Dad, if you were, I have a slide pop up in one of my presentations that says, stop dragging your kids through the inevitable hurt. Just, the sooner they can get where they are valued and get that interaction. And that's what we do. We turn around and say, hey, go to this camp or that camp. We ask coaches. It's never going to be our determination. Oh, yes, I think you can play D1. I want everybody to play D1. I'm Auntie Cheri, right? But it's not necessarily the right fit for them either. And I'm an ex-catcher trainer, and I really, really protect the catchers because with the amount of pitchers on a roster now, there's a lot of bench-sitting catchers, a lot of bullpen catchers that thought that they could bridge the gap. And it's heartbreaking. And it's because their parents didn't help them understand and see the playability. Sue Inquist is one of my big idols at an NSCA conference. She said, let's just do simple math. 27 on a college roster, pretty average. That means 2/3 of you are going to be subs. You either have to decide to accept that role for the outcome of getting a College World Series ring or having that Power 5 conference experience, or understanding your journey and your expectations of your journey. But I think it's the parents that set up this D1, look at Oklahoma on TV or College World Series. I think they set up this expectation. Class of 2023 was the biggest class I've ever had where people quit.
Wow.
And it was top heavy with the portal, 5th years, all the moving around, but the lack of success because parents really thought that they could maneuver and manipulate and get the outcome of what they wanted. Even saying, hey, I'll make a donation to a team if my kid could even be a walk-on. I'm like, walk-on? Why in the world? And they really believe that their kid can bridge the gap. And I'm like, look, if your kid could bridge the gap there, then there's 2 or 3 other layers in Division I that would have come for your kid.
Right.
Why would you do that to your kid? But they don't even realize they're hurting their kid today by keep pressing the issue. Like, what ego slam is it going to be when you're one of 8,000 student athletes in the whole country that are actually get to write student athlete on your resume? To me, I'm previous to Title IX. I still think it's the biggest, greatest thing that ever happened to female athletes. But they see it as an insult. Like one coach told a kid, hey, well, I'll take you, but I'd love to see you go junior college. And the kid went out crying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, junior college. I'm going to tell you right now, junior college is the best kept secret, the best coaches in the business, the best trainers, the best promoters. They help promote their kids out. They get seen against some of the biggest, colleges in the country head to head with them. I think people are really, really missing out by setting a false expectation.
I have some good relationships with some junior college coaches, and they're not the only ones that tell me that there's not that big of a gap anymore in the talent from D1 to D2 to D3. It has shrank over the years just because the popularity of the sport, more girls are wanting to be good at the sport, so they're putting in the extra time. So those spots are limited, so they got to go somewhere. And it doesn't matter if you have the talent to play D1. Maybe you just don't want to go there. You want to take a lighter load and go be a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or something like that. So the academic side of it eats up just as much time, and you don't want to go 100% softball. You want to go 50-50, and that's perfectly fine. And that's one of the questions is, when we get into talking, open up the dialogue with these coaches and stuff, what are these questions that parents and players need to be throwing out there or asking, whether at a camp, in an email, at a showcase event where the coaches are out there and are actually able to talk to these coaches? What are some of these questions they need to ask them so they get the most bang for their buck and get an answer that they can actually use? It may not be the answer they want, but the answer that they can get some information from and be able to make a decision off of that.
Well, I actually hate that part of the process because I tell my student athletes, because I prep them before they go to camp. I prep them for visits. I prep them for phone calls. So I'm giving it individually. Right. 99% of the questions they ask is on their website. They didn't do their homework. They didn't go investigate. And here's the big one. They need to go watch games. Yeah. If you think you can play at a school, you should have been in their stands watching them play long before you ever went to their camp. When we get to camps, I'll flip that on you and talk more about my philosophy about camping. And that's actually going to be my Twitter Live this Monday night.
Okay, cool. We'll jump into that.
Detailing that one. I'm going hard. I sometimes don't make friends with people that have a different agenda, right? Yeah. And my agenda is for the student athletes. So I'm going to stick strong to that one. But I'm going to give you an example, and I may quote her awards wrong. But we had an athlete right when I started. Man, clearly a dynamic kid, leadoff batter. I think she could have got D1, but she got into it so late. She came to me at the end of her junior year going, I don't understand. I got a 31 ACT. I'm a great player. What happened? Self-promoting, thinking it was just easy and that, you just showcase your talent and the coaches just accidentally show up to watch you play. And put her through the process. She finally said, look, I want to go to med school. I want to go to some kind of medical career. And, I do want to play softball. And so she ended up going to UT Dallas. She was I think, 4-time All-American. I think she broke 2 NCAA records. Wow. She actually went through multiple coach changes. I'm going to guess on the numbers. I think she went through 4 coach changes in 5 years. She never left. She never went in a portal crying that she was mistreated or, that there was a coach change and some reason for her to leave. She was just, zeroed in on her goals. She knew what she wanted. She checked every box in the decision grid. And when I came back to her and I said, how was it? She goes, I didn't need a coach to do what I needed to do. I needed to play softball and have fun. And her team stayed together, maybe 1 or 2 left, but just not the debacle that happens today. And I was like, wow, and she's just an outstanding student athlete, and she's now a PA. And I mean, just her life is so set up for success. That's what I like. That's what I want to see. And she is a video. I don't know if I have it on my website or not. I'll have to check that one, but just a fab. Those are the kind of student athletes and adults that as a parent you're looking for, right?
Yeah. Research, we keep going back to that, and you've had that answer for a couple of the questions. That research is a part of these answers to these questions. And how much research can these athletes and parents do? And is it ever enough to prepare them for those visits or those college camps or those interactions? I mean, how much research do they really truly need to do, and how important is it?
They should do a lot, and they should watch, listen. Google, I don't know what my brain would do without Google. It is, I call it Mr. Google. Have you checked with Mr. Google yet? And tell me what you've learned and what is it you're seeking? Because as we all know in politics and in marketing today, they feed you the propaganda or the agenda that they want you to learn and listen from. Mm-hmm. Go ask the haters. Go ask it in a reverse question like, hey, what's wrong with that university? Hey, why did that coach leave? Go watch film. I don't know. I do not understand how a kid could have their eyes and heart set on a particular program and never see them play and never watch the coach. Mm-hmm. They can turn on some shine and I love it, man. The pitch is big at the top level, man. I love nothing more than being part of the top level recruit. The pitch is big, but that's where we're really good because some of these top level athletes think, oh, my talent's going to get me there. Man, they're the ones making mistakes. That's why the portal is there, because they're misreading the information. They're misreading the pitch. Mom and dad are just excited about the banner on signing day versus the actual outcome. So we've been very, very successful with some top level student athletes because of that, because of the amount of research. And it's so different back to the what's in it for the individual student athlete. I'm going to tell one kid to go research this versus one kid to do that, because we know the business side of the recruiting. We know where those coaches have been. We're not only looking at their record, but we're looking at their reputation and their recruiting. There's a couple Twitter lives I get on where they talk about, the top recruits in the country. And I'm like, man, these fans are serious. They know every inner working. And I know it from what I see out there and how they approach recruiting. There's some winners and some losers. And if you're not a top level recruiter in the sport, it doesn't matter how good you coach in the field. Recruiting is going to dictate their success.
Yeah. I mean, the best coaches are the best recruiters in a lot of different ways.
Oh, and don't get me started on Patty Gasso, because I think she's the goat of everything. I even said it to her son. I said, I don't even know where to start to not be creepy, but she mastered it in all categories. And I don't know how she's going to bottle that and sell that for future generations. But I mean, John Wooden, I'll put her right next to that statue.
Yeah, I could see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One question I wanted to get into. Actually, there's two that I wanted to dive into. One is social media, and we'll jump on that here in a minute. But I wanted to talk about Showcase. And the only reason is because that word gets thrown around so much, and I know that you get hit with that question too. So Can you explain what a real college showcase is and what it does for the student athlete and why it is or isn't important to the
Yeah,
student
this is
athlete?
such a loaded question because it's cart before the horse before the cart, and it really is this ball and cup moving thing, literally once a year and a year ahead of time. If a student athlete doesn't have their summer schedule right now, I'm not sure I know what to say to you. You're probably not going to the top
Right.
tournaments in the country. And then somebody like me, I'm spending all my time calling coaches. I got 7 texts right now while we're sitting here telling coaches where to go to find our student athletes.
All right.
We mastered this listening to the coaches. Again, our system's built on the coach feedback. We listened to the coaches way back 9 years ago. I had a Google sheet, and the coach would say, "Where are your kids going?" Well, now that's all up online. If you go to our events page, our student athletes are starting to populate where they're going this summer. I have coaches already calling me now, asking me, where are the best student athletes going? Because I have a budget. I have to know where to spend my budget, and I have to know how to do my travel. So then I can focus on my season that's coming up like right now. And I'm just like, whoa, they're really ahead of it. So, I flip it too. I spend more time working January through April getting the coaches' eyes on my student athletes than I do when it comes showcase time.
Yeah.
Because this is where the respect comes for the college coaches. They know who they're recruiting.
Yeah.
They know the layers of the layers. I heard my husband say to a Power 5 conference coach once, "You're not standing next to your peers in your conference recruiting the same kid, you're in the wrong park." Yeah. And that's what happens. These showcase managers of their events, and I want to tout Jeff Falali right now with Tulsa Elite. I love it. He's done a phenomenal job for many, many years. And then, all the politics come and everybody has a showcase at the same time in another city. But one, he has an advantage with a park that's big enough to house, a good number of teams at the same time. Right. But then the college coaches come and they got to have a camp. They have to have a multi-school camp with their event in summertime when the rules allow it in order to ensure the coaches show up. They are paid to show up because they're paid to come to the camp. And the handshake back is, yes, I'm going to stay and recruit your event. And then that draws the teams. And then the teams draw the coaches. So that cart and horse thing start happening. Well, who's coming to your event? Well, which coaches are coming? It really becomes this relationship. So the good showcases draw the coaches that match their talent level. They try to get the talent, and then the sometimes they back out. It's happened to our organizations where they set up a big event. They have big namer teams coming. They've got coaches commit to come, and then the team says, "Oh, you didn't get enough other teams." Man, that's just bad blood. It's bad relationships. It doesn't last long. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. All of that happens in this sport. And like you mentioned earlier, the relationships are thick and continuous, but you got to deliver results. I don't know how people, choose a travel ball coach without looking at results, choose recruiting without looking at proven results, not just what they pitch you, and how you go to a showcase and sign up without results. The mistake the parents make is they think it's their travel ball coach's job to get them recruited. They think it's the showcase person's job to get the coaches there. It is not. 100% recruiting happens to the student athlete and the parents, and they drive it. And that's problem plus good. It's regional too. Yeah. There's 2 coaches and a grad assistant, soon to be 3 coaches. They're going to split. They're going to split for the national tournaments. They're going to go East, Texas, and Southeast. And if they're northern schools, they may drop one into Ohio or Pennsylvania or New York, but very, very, very strategic and very limited. Most of them come to the Southeast. And man, I'm sure it's going to be another topic about how much it costs to be in travel ball. It is what it is. Crazy. You got to look at what you want and what the outcome is. And I have very specific things I like, just like I mentioned, Jeff Falali, about certain showcases, but it's the makeup of what they've got, and it's the years and dependability of delivering the results. And then every year there's somebody with a new name on their back that thinks they can do it different and better. Man, at my age, it gets really old. Oh God, here comes another one that thinks they got all the answers. Their one daughter got recruited, and they tell everybody on Facebook what to do. And it's like, oh my God, not again. Can I have 1 year where we don't have a new guy that thinks they got all the answers?
And I think that probably plays into the biggest reason why I do what I do, and I started this whole podcast thing, was because, like I told you before we started recording, it's like I wanted this information. I wanted to talk to the people that I wanted to talk to get this information, because I either have heard about them, or I followed them enough and I respect their opinion on stuff. So I want to ask them the questions, and I want to get the answers for me. And I could have kept it to myself. Me and you could just had a phone call. You know what I'm saying?
I have this phone call every day, actually, Tyler.
Well, yeah. So, and I was like, you know what? There's some information that you need to keep close to the chest, because it is your business, is what you do. This is how the cycle works. But there's also,
I always pray for a day I can be Thelma and Louise and just say whatever I want to say, and just put it out there and just let it be. But you can't.
We can have this conversation. It's like someone just heard me and you. We were sitting down for a lunch, and me and you were talking, and someone overheard the conversation, and they're going to be able to take this information and put it into their process and then figure out what's helped them make a decision. And that's what it all boils down to me. So one major thing that I see is, like you said, there's people that think that they can reinvent this wheel, this recruiting. The wheel is so big when it comes to sports recruiting. NCAA, doesn't matter, Division I, NAIA, it doesn't matter. It is so big that you're not going to go in there and be a unicorn and think you're going to be able to get those results, because it takes too much time for stuff to evolve. And I want you to kind of add into that a little bit about the evolving of recruiting.
Yeah.
And
some of the mistakes there. And I'll add the mistakes there. Sometimes they align with the wrong people, and you don't know. I mean, this happens in corporate America too. You align with the wrong leader. The leader gets fired. You're all done. Yeah. Same thing happens. The brand changing. And of course, I'm very well known for being part of the Glory organization because of my husband, and I'm contracted with them. And I'm very proud of what they built. And there is, things would I do different? Sure, that's just life. But man, you got to get behind something and be proud of it, and support it, whether you like everything about it or not. And that's just life. But they're brand changing. So one of my favorite lines is, wherever you go with you. So fix you first. Mm-hmm. The team hopping, same in college, team hopping, portal hopping. When a kid quits, my husband yells, "Oh, there goes another portal, baby." It's just, instead of conflict resolution, communication skills, interacting and having, I'm structured. I'm very, very compartmentalized. SMART goals. We start SMART goals in February. We set them for ourselves. I have a business plan. What is your mission, your vision, your goals? And then attacking it. It has to be that strategic, because it's that much of an important decision for your family to do the right thing and get the right experience. I've heard this. I've never done the math on it because it's way out of my league. I've heard one in five actually make it at the school for 4 years playing and getting the degree that they chose. That's another can of worms we could talk about, picking a degree when you're 15 years old. My word, just not very mathematically feasible. So you talked about social media. I'm actually doing that. I think it's February 13th. I've got that scheduled for my Twitter Live. That is a whole can. You had
posted. I think I saw it. It was on the Twitter.
Yeah, whole can of worms. I had to kind of inhale and exhale this morning when I tweeted one of them. Like, what are you putting out there? I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm scrolling through, going, this hurts my eyeballs. Who thinks that this is good content that helps them get recruited? And I did a Twitter Live last year, and it was even a D2 coach said, it's 99% of the time you're giving me a no versus a yes. I've had SEC coaches tell me, when you put out live content, I'm going to find fault in it. You are quicker to get off a list than on a list. When you're putting yourself presented, hitting tracks, I haven't been a clinician in 10 years, and it breaks my eyeballs when I see some of these hits out there, and look at my hit tracks thing, look at my big, huge thing. How does that apply to a game? Oh, but my coach told me to post. Oh, my team told me to. My hitting coach wanted me to. And I'm like, do they think that's good? Do they think that's going to help you? You're in development. You're in the process. So my determination would be they got to get to see you play. So it's marketing to get to see you play, not to get you off a list. Right. So when you follow our process, we do end of season highlights, offense, defense. And so we're putting it 3 or 4 times a year. We're not barfing daily weekly content on coaches. Excuse me, I'm gasping for air. It's so emotional. I had another SEC coach say they put so much up there, they literally call it barfing, that it deemed my Twitter irrelevant. I don't even open it anymore.
Wow.
Why are we tagging coaches? You just inserted yourself into their face when they didn't ask you to be. That's not their process. If they change it to be their process, Lord have mercy, they have no idea what the can of worms they're going to put on themselves, right? It's going to be like football. Football doesn't even recruit that way. People are delusional when you really break it down. It's marketing 101. Who, what, where, when, why. Why are you putting it out there? Who's your audience? Is it really getting there? Twitter is not a direct marketing tool. Yeah. It's a public blast, hoping that you get threads of tags. And then there's tags of this little, I don't want to name their names, but I call them Klingons. I call them hashtag Klingons, because they're little people that come up with businesses just to retweet and to be part of the analytics. They're not helping you recruit. Right. The college coaches are not clicking on that hashtag to get a stream of videos. There might be one or two that are doing it, some of the younger kids, but they usually get burnt by it. Yeah. And then I actually asked this one girl said, "Oh, but the coach at the camp told me to tag them." I said, "For what? For their social media presence? So you're promoting the camp, or are you promoting yourself?" Because my prep when you go to a camp is be so good at camp they know your name. You don't need to take a photo with them and tag them and tell the public, "Hey, I just went to this number one college in the country that I'm never going to play for." Talk about parents dragging your kids through the disappointment. You're sending that expectation that they're going to play there. They went to the camp and they really like me. They remember my name. And worse, we did a tour of the campus. This is where I want to go to school. I mean, my heart breaks when I get that message. That's why I'm preempting that. I'm telling them where they should or shouldn't and how to, and the who, why, where, when. Yeah. Man, but clinic work, pay your clinician to be better, not to promote you on social media. The worst, and I love my batting and pitching coaches, so please don't take this wrong, when they say, "Oh no, this kid is D1 for sure." What? Have you ever seen what's out there? They don't go to games. They don't evaluate where they're sitting in the marketplace. It's not that they're not good or that they were D1 compared to kids you've coached for 20 years. It's what's out there in the marketplace today.
Right.
So, gosh, Tyler, you just got me on fire here.
That's a good point. I love that answer, because it's not a straightforward answer. It's not like yes or no. It's not. There's gray in there. So everybody's situation is different, but there are clear do's and don'ts to the process. And I think what it's boiled down to now is when COVID happened, we couldn't get out, we couldn't talk, we couldn't.
That's when it started.
And then the Twitter that's just all it was. It was just, I got to get this out and get it out there. So now the younger girls, the girls that are coming around 2 and 3 years later after that impact, they see that there's so much.
It's the parents.
That this is what you do. So they think girls are posting on Twitter. You need to post on Twitter. You need to be tagging these coaches. Man, the coaches don't get it anymore. They don't care.
I had my own advocates arguing with me. Well, in my region, this is what they're doing. I said, is it working? Where's their results? They're just doing, as a natural marketer, I would want to do that. But you got to ask the decision maker, is this what you want? There's 1,650 decision makers. They're going to want and need something different. That's why the NCAA has one process, and it's emailing. And now they're allowed to heart something or like something, but they're only allowed to say, yes, I'm interested, or to send a questionnaire or invite you to their camp. And camp, man, that's a whole other subject matter.
Yeah. And I wanted to get you a question. I don't even think it's in the list of questions that I sent you, but these girls that are the parents and the athletes are taking pictures of them holding up their letter.
Oh,
their camp letter. Their camp letter. And
that's new. This happened just this year.
I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings when I do it, and it's awesome. I'm glad you got the letter, but I could get one if I wanted one. You know what I'm saying?
Well, okay, so let me tell you, I had a dad that's really funny in South Texas, sent me a picture of his kid opening up the health insurance saying, "I got my health insurance," And I was like, dude, you're the funniest guy I ever heard. I don't think the parents understand the damage. And here's where the damage is in social media, the hate. And I think Mike Zimmer and I talked about it. The minute you post something up there, we all, even dads and moms are going to see what's wrong with it. It's sadly our human nature as clinicians, as people of the game, to see something wrong with it rather than what's right with it. And worse, you create this following of haters. They are not your friends. It's the most contentious process to go through. You're going to know who your friends are in the end when you all land in college. But that initial September 1st day, man, there's some crying. There's some unhappy parents because they thought that they really had it down. And the bottom line is they don't get the feedback. They don't have the relationships with coaches. The coaches at a camp are not going to tell you, girlfriend, you ain't good enough for us. They're going to say, oh, you're awesome. Hope to see you again soon. Because there's a different reason. Coaches are doing camp because they think they're helping you. They think they're developing and giving you skill and giving you information. But it's not individual. It's their propaganda, right? It's their information. And honestly, they really do have great skills and drills and experiences to give you. So there should be some aspect of that. But the real camps happen after the coaches have come to see you play because they know the talent level and then they want to see you together. And then they want to compare you and say who is the best shortstop and compile their own list for who they will recruit on September 1st. So the parents that do not understand that recruiting happens in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, it's evaluation. It's not recruiting, it's evaluation. They're missing the boat. They don't understand it. And if they're going it alone, they're going to be sorely mistaken. And then here comes the bad news. They start blaming the service, the I don't want to name names for apps that, do emailing. And I mean, there's 400 apps that are baseball and softball up on the Apple Store. I mean, all you got to do is go look. They don't get you recruited. Those big, large companies that, just have a database and have a name that gives you some impression that they're, coming looking for you. It's all a facade unless you actually have somebody actually giving you a system and doing it and evaluating you along the way and getting you in the right lane and giving you that right feedback. And you got to be willing for the feedback too. You can't come in saying, well, I'm going to start in 7th and 8th grade. And by the way, to the D2 coach who put a Instagram up on Twitter saying that, stop emailing me, you class of 27s. First of all, we don't have our 27s emailing Division 2, but it's almost counterproductive because why would we separate D2 from D1, when you're trying to target a student athlete and just develop a relationship? I even had an email from a D3 that says, do you really think I'm supposed to call all 120 kids at this camp and provide feedback to you? Because that's what my emails say. I said, well, why wouldn't you want to? One, two, that's why they're coming to camp. And yes, I know while you're at camp, you should be able to get that feedback. That's why you should be going. You should be interacting with that coach and gaining tips and techniques and information that you want. But they're not going to tell you they're recruiting you. And I'm not asking the college coach to tell me they're recruiting them, but it's about building the relationship. And she actually replied back because we're quite friendly. I didn't mean for you to take your job so seriously. I do take my job that seriously. And yes, you and I both know because she's been in the business a long time and very well regarded that it is about relationships. It's about communication. And if I got a kid coming to your camp from another state and they spent the time and money to get there, man, tell them they're not going to make it. Tell them it's not their layer. But it's sometimes better to come back to one of the representative or an advocate and say, hey, this is what this kid would need to do in order to play in my arena because it's early enough. We can redirect them if they're really targeted. But coaches know they're fishing any more than the college coaches are fishing, sending 5 million emails out to every high school kid in the country, inviting them to a camp in another state. I mean, it's fishing on both ends. At some point, we have to do what's in the right interest for the student athlete.
And I think that's what separates you and CSA from a lot of what's out there in these different services is you're going to take a look at the entire situation, the whole package. You're not going to tell them what they want to hear. You're going to tell that family what they need to hear because they need that honesty. And you may be the only one that gives it to them. And all of a sudden, that light bulb has come on now. and it may push them to go a different direction. It may push them to go harder. It may push them to something else. But you're at least going to give them some guidance at this point where it's an honest answer. This is truthful. This is where it's at. Now, it may hurt. It may sting. But this is where it's at, and we start to move in a different direction.
Yeah, we chuckle about it a little bit because we do write down when they say what they're ideally looking for, and then 4 months later, 6 months later, 2 years later, the outcome is completely different. My favorite one is those cold states that say, I only want to play in Florida. I got one who actually stuck to her guns about it and had the talent to dictate it, and really went through many times of me advising differently because she had 2 D1 offers in her area. Sight be unseen, but that was her goal. That was what she wanted, and it was targeted, and she had every reason to accept it. It was her choice. And I think she'll do very, very well there. But I mean, defying the odds of over 915 student athletes, one gets to pick the region they get to play in.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't want to say it's like hitting the lottery, but in a lot of ways, it's like hitting the lottery because there's so much that has to fall in place for you to end up going to the dream school, playing that dream position, and this vision that you have of how it's going to work out. Man, you have a better chance of hitting the lottery. Like when you're 14 and you make that decision and you're stuck to your guns, man, it's just not going to happen like that.
And give it up to the college coaches. I had this conversation yesterday with a 2024 that's not committed that, man, every time I talk to you, it's changing. Yeah, it changes that often. You've got 50 balls in the air and 50 coaches making different decisions and, different talent levels and expectations. And it is ever changing. It's just be willing to listen and learn, and don't try to imagine or evaluate or think that I'm hurting your feelings or that I'm giving you misdirection or your travel ball coach is telling you, different than what I'm telling you. Man, just sit back and, you hire people, you choose a travel ball coach, make the decisions, but you can't think that you're going to, or that somebody's discounting or not valuing your experience, because the college coaches know who is going to be successful at their university. They're potentially handing you an average of $1,000 per student athlete, right? Okay. That's at the low level. There's some that are $70,000 a year right now. Yeah. They know who's going to be successful. They're not going to make a bad decision there. And that's the part that parents don't understand. You, myself, parents, and a travel ball coach are not going to have anywhere as much as knowing when the college coach does. So I always say it's a student athlete. You're in the driver's seat before September 1st, which is for Division I, their junior year. Mm-hmm. You, as a student athlete, are in the driver's seat. You have the opportunity to go out and target who you want. September 1st then becomes they're in the driver's seat. Yeah. And that's a hard pill to handle. I've had tears on September 2nd. I don't understand. They liked my Twitter. They sent me to camp. They like me. I don't know where we went wrong. Well, you didn't go wrong. They called you. They put you on a Zoom call. They're evaluating, 40 to 100 people at that point. I always say 10 catchers, 10 pitchers, 10 infielders, 10 outfielders. Everybody has their own method. Again, 1,650 coaches having their own method. But you have to imagine we need to have that many balls in our court too, that we're targeting, and getting that feedback and being willing to say it's not personal. It's not that I don't believe in you. Sight unseen, I have a whole bunch of kids I don't even see play. I don't need to. It's not me on the person. It's not the person. It's the process. And once they accept that it's the process, and that most people, 98% of us, I would say, are doing it in the best interest of the person, then it's great. The other 2% was watch the gimmicks up front, watch the camp gimmicks, watch the combines. I had another one send me another top level of players at every tournament. I was tournament champion at the Susie Smith, Halloween mask in, Podunk, Minnesota. I mean, my goodness, you have to be able to see through those gimmicks and really try to understand what you're going to get out of those experiences.
Before we get out of here, I want to ask you about these national level tournaments, these national championship tournaments and stuff that there is. I mean, let's face it, during the summertime, during the peak of the recruiting, these college coaches got to get out to these tournaments. How much is put into the college recruiting element whenever these college coaches can see higher echelon talent playing against higher echelon talent against each other whenever they're starting to make their decision-making process. How important is it to the athlete to try to get to those big time national tournaments to play the highest end of competition they can?
I think if you're reaching for the high end of recruiting, you have to be in that game. If you're expecting to play top level of anything, D1, D2, D3, I think you have to be at those tournaments, playing against the talent, being recruited at those events. I'm very biased in this. If I were a college coach and I saw one college coach do this, and she's still one of my favorites, even though she owes me a phone call right now, I'm gonna tease her about it. She's at another school now, but she literally came up to my husband's team at the end of the PGF tournament 4 years ago and says, "I'll take any kid, even on your bench, and I'll give them the right amount of money to play at my school." And they're right. Those top level kids that are playing with big rosters, 18 or higher, that's another podcast we could have.
Sure.
Playing at the top level against the top talent in the country. As a college coach, I would bet 10 times over on them. And I'm going to tout Marty Tyson on this one. Yeah. One of my favorite coaches in the country. Man, when you watch him coach, it's not for everybody. It's not a tender, and I don't want right. the snowflake to be a political comment, but it's not a tender, soft approach. It is a very loving, kind, but very loud and very direct and very structured. But I'll tell you, I sat with them at the College World Series, and I may not get this number wrong, but on that field, there was either 11 or 13 of their players playing in the College World Series. If that's what you want, you have to be willing to go through it the way that people produce it. Texas Glory is the same. I mean, there's a TikToker that's out there putting, going through and seeing where everybody recruits from. It's the top level tournament teams over and over again. If parents want that top end experience and they have the talent to be there, then they need to get on the team that can get you there, and they need to get to the tournament. So talent, team, tournament, then academics, education, intangibles. I'm a, silver award, gold award, Girl Scout, person. I admire all of those extra things. That is not as much looked at as the talent and being prepared to play when you get there. That's where there's 51,000 registered travel ball coaches. That's why the coaches are not going to pick up the phone and talk to everyone, even in our organization. They're not going to pick up the phone and talk to, we have 416 and under coaches, and we had 7 D1 shortstops get committed in the class of 2024.
Ooh.
I'm like, hello, people. They're not calling them directly. They're calling Kevin Shelton, Ed Naudin, Cheri Naudin, the people that have done it over and over again, and, to make that solidified. But when they get to the game, they're going to talk to Mike Zimmer and John Eric and say, tell me about that kid. Yeah. What is she doing? And how are you training her? And they're going to then evaluate the travel ball coach. Are you training them the way to play softball? You got 12 on your roster. I'm sorry if you have 14 on your roster. It's going to be a tough manage. They don't want the kid that's not going to be happy playing a role. And I would tell you that even in Division III, my own daughter's a Division III coach. It is, you can't go in. They quit. They go on to nursing school. They go on to PT school. You don't control the individual components. So you have to protect yourself with the size of the roster. And that is just, if we'd stop the quitting and we would, commit and sign a contract for 4 years and stay, then you would slow down the number of rosters. But you need that many because of injuries. You need that many because of life. You need that many because of, personal choice. And as long as those components are still out there, you cannot go out there and compete at the high level top tournaments in the country in 100-degree weather. I was there one year in a top club. I love that tournament with Brian Madden. 62 coaches were watching Texas Glory versus Mercado. And it was so hot, I had to go get a cold rag in the bathroom and put it around my head. I thought I was going to get sick to my stomach. Yeah. But it was the most amazing thing. And I was standing talking to a parent, and I wish I would remember their name. I know they follow me on Facebook. But she came in to pinch run, and the mom and dad start jumping up and down. They were so ecstatic. And I'm like, that's your daughter? And they're like, yeah. And I said, oh, they said, she's pinch running. We're so excited. And I'm like, yes, that's what it looks like. And I asked them, so what are you so excited about? They know she'll play a role next year, and they know she's being developed for the next level. Yeah. I'm like, high five, brother man.
That's gold right there. I love that story. That's gold. And it's going to bring me to this last point. And I know you have experience, like you've known some of the higher higher caliber organizations throughout the years, I hear a lot of people say the big time organizations, the lower teams in those organizations pay for and they feed the top organizations so that they can pad their pockets. And I just shake my head and I just smile and I move
There's
away.
a TikTok thing where they go do 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 do. Yeah.
Because unfortunately, unless you're in those situations and in those bigger time organizations or bigger organizations, you don't really know the inner workings of that individual organization. And I'm not saying all organizations are great. I'm not saying Texas Glory is better than Bombers is better than Batbusters is better than Corona Angels is better than the Firecracker, whoever. It's all a situational thing. If it's good for you and you're getting the value out of it that you put into it, then it's good for you. But the people that have never been a part of an organization of that size and don't understand the power that a network of that size has and how they can go about developing and the resources at their disposal and the conversations and the experience and stuff. What can you tell parents to at least entertain the thought of thinking, hey, maybe it's this big because they're doing something right?
So I'm, again, a college educated marketing salesperson for 28 years. And I don't believe I ever looked at who was beating me in a negative way. I was like, how did they get there? Mm-hmm. What did they do right? What behaviors, what approaches, and then yet I think we're all individuals. So, you're always going to be you and I'm always going to be me. We could take the same plan and it's going to come out different. Right. But I always say the haters, and haters, I'm going to flip it around and unfortunately answer it in a negative tone, which is the people that complain, the people that are poking the fingers, it's because they can't play there. The haters that have come and gone, they didn't get what they wanted. They didn't get the respect or they felt the playing time. And, that coach only played their favorites. Well, hit more. That's always my response. You want to complain, hit more. Pitching parents, you want to complain about the defense, making errors, well, then strike them out. Let's be real, right? And that's the problem. Is it's human nature to look that it's somebody else's fault and that somebody did it to you. One of the first years my husband had multiple teams, this one family complained that my husband, just didn't put her in the right position. No, actually he put her on a team where she got a lot of profile, had D1 offers, story to be told. The parents are still out there creating negative mantra that somehow she shoulda, coulda, woulda gone bigger, better. Well, she didn't. And it wasn't our choice. It wasn't positioning. It was actually positioning to help her get what she could get. And that's why there's 1%ers and 99%ers. There's only so many that can play at that level, no matter how much you want to be. Right. Every single team, every person but one on my husband's team of 18 right now in the class of 2024 committed. And it's not by fault. It's just we're still working the layers for this one particular player. 8 Power 5. I mean, what? But you have people poking holes. So we're on the second team. Well, yeah, you're on the second team because you couldn't play on the better team, or the role you would have played on that team wouldn't get you what you're going to get elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And I mean, parents, even in my own portfolio, I just don't understand why she isn't where we want her to be. Well, a lot of it is not listening early enough. Testing, got to have your test scores, got to have a test score. I don't care. NCAA's changed it right now. That's another podcast on the 13th on Twitter Live I'm doing. It doesn't matter that you've got to know that you can compete academically in that school. And then you got to have transcripts. You got to have good skill video. If you haven't seen good skill video, you need to go up on our page, and we have a sub that does it across the country. It is the best skill video because it's what the college coaches told us they want. It's not a promotion video with a bunch of blah, blah, blah all over it. It's skill, 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 skill. In 30 seconds, you see if that kid is your layer. It's that system and that process that we have that tells that student athlete where they can play. The parents don't like it. Oh, well, then I'll just quit and go to the school of my choice. Well, then you didn't understand what being a student athlete is really all about. Yeah. And that's the problem. Just to be one of those 8,000 is a big deal. Just accept where your student athlete can play and don't make it a negative, and don't blame somebody else for not getting it. I'm going to guarantee you it's God-given talent and work rate. Those two alone, they don't know what they're working for. They have no idea. You ask any freshman, time management, and they didn't work hard enough physically to get there. That's why they struggle as freshmen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I like to think that there's a place for all of them to play in college, but there's just so many college softball player or would be college
Yeah,
softball.
and I hate that one. I see Olympic athletes up on TikTok. I love TikTok. I'm all over there. Oh yeah, there's a place for everybody. No, there's not. There really isn't. You cannot lie to people and tell them it's just going to organically happen and they're going to accidentally be found because of their talent in some backwoods country town. It's just not. You're actually doing your kid a disservice by not starting early, getting good solid evaluation, getting somebody in your camp, somebody going through that journey side by side with you and actually guiding you where you can play versus where you want to play.
Yeah. And my advice to anyone listening to this episode of the podcast is if you haven't started yet, start today. Make a list, whatever, just start writing down, brainstorm what you think matters between you and your daughter to get her to that next level of college.
Not the name of the school.
Yeah.
Don't write the name of the school down. Write the behaviors, write the experiences, write the things that matter in life versus the name of the university. My youngest daughter played soccer in college, if people don't know that. And when she came home with a card and I looked at it and she played at Central Arkansas, I was like, what? My 31 ACT kid is going to play at Central? What? That didn't match academic. That didn't match. She wanted to be a lawyer. Didn't match any of those things. Well, let me tell you, she was number one in her department. They won a title ring. She then went to Baylor Law School. She's a barred attorney practicing for her third year. Okay. It defied all of the odds. But that's because she could, and it worked. But I mean, we poo-pooed the card when we first got it. We were like, what? Arkansas?
Everything happens for a reason. Everything.
Exactly. But, her coach said the same thing. It's go through the experience and evaluate it and go where you're valued. We appreciate that soccer. And I love soccer. So you want to engage me for soccer, I'm all in for a good game.
There's no, we could take the twins, and I use this analogy quite a bit. We could take twins and do the exact same thing for both. They can have the exact same scores, the exact same skill level, and the process not go the same for them. So everybody's process is different. There's no, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do this, this is what's going to happen, because we all fall back to that human nature. We have college coaches. We have athletic directors moving. We have money changing hands. We have the transfer portal. We have the butterfly effect. So you got to do yourself a favor and do everything that you can as soon as possible so that you can be reactive when you need to be, but be proactive now when you still can.
Yeah. And be humble yourself and realize you can't possibly know everything about this business, right? I don't know anything about anybody else's business. And it's so important to your student athlete in their life as young adults. The next 40 years, you'll hear that over and over again from a lot of people, but it really is. It's life determining this kind of decision, and to think that you can navigate it and what's best. Man, I had 3 athletes. I made plenty of mistakes. They would be way different positioned if I know what I know today.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, we learn as we go. I'm the exact same way on a way lower level than you, but. As I've told my oldest daughter.
We all were there once, Tyler. We were all there.
I tell her, and she knows, I say, honey, you're my guinea pig on a lot of this stuff. And she's okay with it. She's like, I know, Dad. So, I mean, it is. I try to do the best, but man,
this is where our numbers don't lie. We're 915 student athletes. We have 476 committed. I mean, come on. There's travel teams that have not even done a fraction. The major ones have nationwide, but not intimately involved with them on a one-on-one basis.
That's impressive, to say the least.
Thank you. It's hard work, and you can ask the coaches, man. We're the hardest working service out there. We do what we say we're going to do. We don't sell you a lot of fluff. We work it, and we listen.
That's why I wanted you on here. I wanted to have a chance to talk with you, and it's selfish.
My new best
friend. To talk to you, but also I want to get this information out to others. I mean, the other night on the I think it's called Twitter Space, if I say that correctly, Twitter Space. Yeah, I was listening to you talking. I was like, I can't wait for us to get this podcast and get going. And I mean, they're out there. I mean, you're all over social media. They can find you. The website.
Somebody gave me the best compliment possible, and it's my passion. And, I'm giving free information away. I give free information away to Twitter. I get free information because I realize even if I gave you free everything, it's still not easy enough to do it on your own. And one young lady, poor thing, was private messaging me during that. But what about the expense? And I'm like, you're a 2024 uncommitted in a state that plays softball high school while everybody else is recruiting, and you're saying it's too much money. And so I replied, just get your parents on the phone, because you're spending the money to not get recruited, chasing it, not knowing that I don't want to name the state or the kid, because I'm always protecting the kid. But man, my heart went out there like, sister, get mom and dad on the phone. It's not dollar for dollar. I'll show you how to save the money if you get in early enough. I'll save you my fee every year from the camps and the gimmicks and the spin that you spend chasing it because some Facebook dad told you that, that's the way to do it. So
it's a very expensive mistake going to these camps, going to these showcases, playing for these travel teams and doing stuff. And then the bucket is empty on the other end because you didn't know what you were doing. You were just keeping up with the Joneses. And then when it's time to put up or shut up and that phone doesn't ring, you're like, well, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. I did everything I thought was right. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
What you thought was right.
Mm-hmm.
Your best player in the country, they may still not even go to college and play because they didn't go about it the right way.
And even some of them didn't get the choice that they initially wanted.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, I do appreciate you joining me today. I know you stay busy.
Oh my gosh!
I know your phone has been blowing up. If my phone has been blowing up, I know your phone has been blowing up. So
yeah, I see it every time I turn over here. I try not to look. I'm kind of a
I have to. Yeah, I gotta put it on silent and turn it down, or it'll just keep blowing up. So I know you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm honored that you found me and we're engaging and wanted to hear what I had to say. And Absolutely. I'm full of a lot of free advice, but I really would welcome my site's collegiatesportsadvocate.com. I'd welcome anybody to just go, hey, come talk to me. It's if you're interested, I usually call every single one of them. That's my commitment because I want you to understand what we're all about. We do not, like the other services say, they don't take everybody. That's not true, but we really don't, because we're not going to take a risk with a kid that doesn't meet our profile. We're too hands-on. We know what the pitfalls are already. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. I hope to catch up with you soon.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
Bye.